Welcome to Shaping the NYC Skyline, the podcast that explores the stories behind the buildings that shape our city. I'm your host, David Shamshovich, and I'm here with my co-host,
Brenda Slukowski. Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back. I really enjoyed learning from her. And who am I talking about, people? Deborah Moelis of Handel Architects.
That's right,
The one and only.
founding member and principal.
Yeah?
Handel,
Handel?
which I think is actually a great name. I mean, I know it's not on purpose because it's his last name, Gary Handel, but we can handle it. You want inclusionary housing
Those are
bonus
like-
rights?
that's
We
like-
can handle it.
That's like the iPhone
Handel.
stores where it's like, you break, I fix.
Yeah. I mean, people think and like simple concepts like we can handle this. That's it.
You're not giving people enough credit.
No, I think I'm giving people just enough.
Yeah, people love that kind of stuff.
really-
I
Look at
like to have
Nike.
faith in society.
What's wrong with simplicity? There's nothing. What
Look at
debate?
Nike.
What
We can
debate?
do.
Yeah, just do it. What about the Con Edison? It's like we're on it. Right?
Deborah Moelis of Handel Architects.
Yeah.
So informational. She's one of the leading experts in passive housing. And I like that she knew the background. She knows where it's going. She knows what's in it. And she gave so many details that I think everybody's really going to love it.
But Brenda, what is passive housing?
From what I gained from it, it's all about energy efficiency, guys.
The image I have in mind of like passive housing is just like a comical image of just like a house not wanting to participate in
Right.
activity. But
Yes.
it's not really what it is. What it really is these standards that were created. This airtight design for a building that so that it maintains the heat efficiently. One, has to be obviously air flowing through the system, which he discusses where it creates a more healthy environment because you have fresh air.
Yeah.
Two, your bills are reduced, although there's an upfront cost.
Right, but the upfront cost is offset by the fewer costs on the back end.
Deborah did speak about this. I don't know 100% whether or not this will become the standard as to what people want to do, whether this is more than what's necessary. You certainly will be able to meet the carbon emission standards if your building is passive house.
Yeah, there are two different concepts because when she was talking about passive housing, it's like an allocation of X amount of energy only that you can spend
Yeah.
rather than
Your energy budget.
saving energy budget.
Yeah.
Rather than just saving energy in general.
She's one of the forefront people in this area that knows about this stuff, and it's a very complicated area. And she talks about how she got started, and she was always in it. But she tells about how she got certified in it and the various projects that she worked on.
She's shaped the New York City skyline.
That's
Guys,
right.
I had to add it here because I couldn't fit it in. I was too engrossed in the conversation in the interview to be able to put it that way. I had to put it here.
Not only is she shaping the NYC skyline, but she's also
Saving
Oh,
the NYC skyline.
Wow.
Love it.
That's a good one. That was a
Camilla,
good
that
one.
was,
Okay,
you know,
props.
Thank you.
That's right. So you don't want to just shape it; you want to save it. And see, one of the things that she discussed about saving is wastewater, which is pulling out heat from wastewater, which I thought was something just interesting because not a concept that I was.
I never thought about it.
Yeah, not really thinking about it.
It's not something I want to think about.
Yeah.
Too.
Every time before I flush, I'm just gonna.
No, please. I don't want to go into it.
That was my first thought, but then she was talking
She
about
said no smell.
she was talking about warm water.
It's just pulling the heat from the water because you've already spent the money to heat that
Yeah.
water. You might as well preserve
But if
it.
you adapt your thought, it's way better.
We were so fortunate to have her lecture to us when this is something that she does on major forums, and it's becomes something of an advocate for this because she wants to spread the word. Not a lot of people know about it, and hopefully people listen to this episode know a little bit about more what passive houses. We certainly learned a lot. And if you have any
Start
projects,
implementing it into your projects.
yeah, if you have any questions, you should contact her. We'll leave her information in the notes, and she's happy to answer any questions. And she's definitely has so much information on this topic.
Yeah.
But we're want to dive right into the interview. So without further ado, Deborah Moelis from Handel Architects. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shaping the NYC Skyline. I'm David Shamshovich, and I'm here with my wonderful associates and also co-hosts, Brenda and Camilla. Say what's up.
What's up?
We did not practice that, which is why
No, that was actually perfect.
yeah,
I really liked
yeah.
it. Honestly, it shows our cohesiveness as a team.
This is how we work. I mean, we do work cohesively, right? It's like I'll run down the hall and give you an application, right? And then you can file it.
We'll figure it out.
Run down the hall with paper. David, we are moving away from paper.
Even
is
the
so nice.
signatures can be online. now.
Yeah, it's great. I can't wait till all that
great.
fraud comes back to bite us.
You're thinking worst case.
In the, you know where? Yeah, I'm
You
a
always
lawyer.
have to think the worst case.
And also, we're lawyers. The worst
Right.
case is where we live. And that's also how we make our money, which is a great transition. Off topic. No, it's not a great transition. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But today, our guest is Deborah Moelis, a principal, thank you very much, and founding member of Handel Architects. She is recognized as one of the leading experts in passive housing design. Her groundbreaking work in energy-efficient architecture has not only made her a key figure in the sustainable design community, but also set new standards for what's possible in large-scale building projects. She holds a master's in architecture from Columbia, along with dual degrees in fine arts and science from the University of Michigan, and certified as a passive housing designer, licensed to practice architecture in both New York and California, the two greatest states, right? I really want to welcome you, Deborah. We've wanted to have you here for a while, and we're
least a year.
we're so glad that you reached out to us. I know schedules are busy, but we're so happy and excited to have you on the show.
It's fantastic to be here, to be a part of this fun activity.
Yeah, and it is going to be a fun activity. It's always
We keep it light. We keep it breezy.
We do our best.
It's a conversation. So, Deborah, why don't you give us an understanding of how you started your career and why you ended up in the real estate development community, architecture community. How did that occur? You can start wherever you want to start.
Well, for me, and a lot of architects, it's sort of in our bones and in our blood. I always wanted to be an architect when I was a small child, high school, all the way. It was something that was really in a part of me. And so right away after high school, went to architecture school and fine arts, studied interior design a little bit, and then shot off to Columbia for my master's. So it was just a continuum of always being very focused on becoming an architect.
I've always been fascinated with people who know exactly what they want to do. But how did that? I mean, there must have been something that inspired you. Do you remember anything that made you feel that this is something that you wanted to do?
Well, I loved making models. My father had a shop in our basement, and we used to make things at night, or all the time. We were always making little models and things, and so I just found that to be really fun. And the idea of combining that with all of the sort of cerebral part of architecture, it was just a really great. It's a great.
Yeah.
And
Did you guys
being an architect? I mean, come on, everyone wants to be an architect.
It's Ted Mosby.
Ted Mosby, George
tell you,
Costanza.
Oh, that's
I
right,
thought
George
about-
Costanza.
I thought about being an architect for a little bit. It was on the table.
Was it?
It was.
I mean, I
Because I
think
really like math, and I was very into like the design area, but I'm colorblind, so like the classes that I needed to take to get to like an arts degree were never easy enough or like feasible enough. So I went to law.
So when you finished with your education, what was like your first opening into the field?
So during school, I was extremely lucky to work at SOM. And then after that, I did an internship at KPF out in London as well as in New York. So I got to work at some really cool firms during my education. And then the day I left school, I went to work for Gary Handel. And it's been 30 years now. Wow. We were just about 5 or 6 people starting at, and yeah, now we're in all over the world. We have offices in New York and San Francisco and Boston, a little one in Denver and out in Hong Kong. And so it's just been an incredible 30-year journey of literally growing every day at that job. Well, architecture, I think, inherently is a profession of growth. There's so much to learn, and so every day something new.
What kind
Especially
of
with
projects?
all these regulations and
Yeah.
all
right.
these contracts.
They definitely
kind of
keep us on our
projects did you
toes
start with?
and employed.
So I started with actually a very interesting project for Handel Architects. We primarily design residential buildings, but our first project number 101, is the Sony Metreon, which is an entertainment center in San Francisco. Very
Cool.
interesting. No housing, and it is in the Yerba Buena Gardens Entertainment District. They're out there in San Francisco. I moved out there actually for 6 months, which became 6 years.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
So my first job with Gary and with the team there was not residential. So I spent 6 years kind of like doing this project. And then I came back to New York. And
well, I guess that's why you're certified in California as well.
That's where I got my license initially. Yes, that's where I did. So yeah, and our office out there is lovely. It's smaller than New York, but it's a great place.
So then you came back here after that 6-year period.
And then I started to delve into the residential, yes. And so I do some retrofits and some new construction, something up on the Henry Hudson Parkway. As you go up to your weekend houses on the right there's a residential building, a bunch of different residential projects. So that's from 2000 to, say, 2011. And then in 2011, I needed a new project. And my colleagues come over, they're like, well, we have these 3 projects. Which one do you want? And one of them was the Cornell Tech project. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, I'd never heard of Passive House. Actually, Passive House wasn't fully on the table at that moment, but it was very highly sustainable. Building goals were very highly sustainable.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds super interesting to me. I'll try it. And that's essentially when the trajectory of my life kind of really changes, because I make a decision to do this, to help out with this project, and it takes off from there. It's a fantastic team in-house, and then also we worked with, Stephen Winter and fantastic owners at Cornell and Hudson related, and all of these people put together that want to do this incredibly sustainable building. Not knowing yet that we were going to do Passive House, but it was a competition. We went in with this idea that Passive House could play a role. And ultimately we win that competition, and then we integrate this new thing called Passive House, which no one had heard of.
Can you go into a little bit what it entails?
Sure. So Passive House design has its origins in Germany. In like the late 1990s, it becomes codified by the Passive House Institute. So PHI, that is the European certification form. There is an American certification form, but the buildings that I've worked with just happen to be PHI certified. So it is a certification program that really gives the designers an energy budget, a maximum amount of energy that the building can use. And then you have the ability to get to that energy budget in your creative ways. You must provide a very beautifully tight, robust facade so that no air is coming in or coming out. That facade, what it's going to do, is going to lower the amount of energy that you need to heat and cool that building. And lower that energy, and then you provide a mechanical system to treat that air. So since you have such a tight facade, you also need to ventilate 24/7. You're ventilating that building. So it's a combination of ventilation, robust facade, mechanical, fully electric. If you could do fully electric, doesn't have to be, but it's ideal. And then you lower those loads. And then you meet this energy budget, and that's the way you get certified. So you meet the energy budget, and you also have to pass a blower door test, which I think a lot of us know. That blower door test is pretty common now. In even New York City building code, we have to pass the blower door test where you pressurize the whole building and you see the amount of air that's going in or out of the facade.
You collectively made the decision, we're gonna do a proposal for Passive House here. What were the indications that you said this is going to win it?
So we were very lucky on our team. We had related companies, had a particular individual named Luke Falk, who, by the way, would be an amazing guest for you to have.
Well, that's...
Besides being a fantastically brilliant guy, he's really funny. And so we had Luke Falk and also Lois Arena. Lois is the brains behind the Passive House design from Stephen Winter. And the two of them were on the team. Luke being one of the owners. And they had wanted to do this. They wanted to try this. They had wanted to find a test case. And so, having this opportunity to do this, it was sort of a perfect storm. Cornell, we really rely on universities to kind of get out there and show the world what we can do. That's what happened at University of Toronto with another one of my projects. We really want universities to be on the forefront of, and they usually are with certain types of innovation. So I think it was the perfect storm of related and Hudson wanting to test it as well, and then having the Stephen Winter on board as well.
So if you want to do a one of these passive house designs, what are the guidelines, if any, that you have to follow? How do you determine how best to design the building to make sure that it's as airtight as possible, and make sure that the temperature within the building is kind of similar? You're not having fluctuating temperatures. But how do you make those decisions when there's not really kind of like a handbook for this stuff?
There is a certification program, so we did go out and get certified, right? So there is, I wouldn't say a handbook, but there are methodologies and ways that you can reach these goals. And we know different ways to design a facade. Actually, Socotec, which used to be, they used to be a different name. Oh, Vidaris facade. They also helped detail the facade. So it's understood sort of the way that you want to build the facade. You want it to have a certain amount of insulation and hit a certain value of robustness. And there are ways, we know how to do that. It's a compilation of different methods, but it's not impossible. You can test through calculations, through modeling, to find out if the facade is going to meet the standard. And then you can also, there's engineers. So it is a bit of a learning curve the first time, but it's not an unattainable learning curve. It's certainly doable.
What are the sort of the pros and the cons to doing passive house?
Right. Well, I would say in 2013, it was more expensive, but in 2024, it's getting less and less more expensive as the code gets more and more robust. This is now just really becoming a means to meet the building code. So we have to be careful about saying that it's more expensive, because it might not really be, especially when you look at the other side at how much you're saving in energy costs. So it's very hard to say how much more this costs, especially as codes are getting more robust. I mean, in Massachusetts now, you pretty much have to build to passive house standards to pass the code.
Really?
And floor area, in New York, we used to have zone green. We called it zone green, right, where the first 8 inches, you could deduct 8 inches of floor area when your facade was greater than 8 inches. So we were able to recapture that 8 inches of floor area. Now, with the ultra-low energy building deduction, which I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that. It's a new zoning code deduction that if your building meets a certain standard, you can get a 5% bonus on FAR, which is huge. It's not totally 5%, but the math works out to around 5%. So that's going to really help to make it cost effective.
Yeah, this is a way you get a little bit of a bonus in order to offset whatever space you need to use for to meet those standards.
To meet those standards, because there is a lot of the machinery sometimes takes up more space, and so they're now letting you deduct more of that.
And so what is the difference between? And I don't really know. Maybe you could describe, to the extent that you have that information, which I think you do, is the LEED standards versus the passive house standards.
Well, LEED is a checklist which takes into account a lot of different aspects of a building. If you're close to a subway, you get some points. If you use interior materials, you get a certain amount of points, sustainable interior materials. There's just a lot of categories for LEED, and it's a checklist. That's very different than passive house, which is essentially you're designing a building to use a very limited amount of energy, and when you do that, you pass. So that and make it airtight, you pass. So they are just very different in that sense of the qualities. Passive house doesn't really care about the interior materials. It doesn't care how close you are to a subway. There's hundreds of check boxes of things that LEED offers for credits. So it's quite different. But I do say that Cornell was a LEED Platinum out of the box. It just became LEED Platinum because we've got so many points for being passive house, as well as some of the other sort of easy checkbox things. We were close to a subway.
Yeah. So. And if you meet the passive house designs, which are more stringent, right, I would think you'd meet the LEED standards.
You check a lot of boxes. You do have to still do some specific things because, as I said, there's not... LEED is concerned with a large range of issues. But yeah, we were LEED Platinum, and we won lead housing project of the year or something in that year also.
For
lead for
the,
homes.
for Cornell
lead for
Tech,
homes,
right?
For Cornell Tech, lead for homes, yeah.
Have you guys gone back to look at that building to see how things are evolving over time?
Sure. Yeah, we've gone back. I take people on tours there, and it's holding up. The place looks fantastic. The people that are operating the place, they love they're very proud of the place, and they're also very in tune with how it's working, and they're saying that it's working. And we know the energy bills have gone down, are extremely low, and we're still studying the data, looking for data. It's difficult to get the data. Architects, they don't want to give data.
There's no public. There's no way sometimes to even get into the buildings to look at things.
Right.
And then to collect the data or to determine whether the data is correct or not, is accurately reflected, right?
It's a bit difficult. We're very lucky at University of Toronto. They did share some data with us, which was like mind-blowingly good and just made us all very happy.
Is there any differences in designing, say, a dorm like in the University of Toronto or Cornell Tech? Those are both dorms, right?
Well, I mean, Cornell Tech is small apartments, as opposed to Toronto is full-on dorms.
Okay.
So they are a little different. Cornell Tech has kitchens and baths in the apartments.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
But for the dorms, as opposed to doing the residential or the apartments, is there a difference from a design perspective, particularly in the passive house area?
Well, so we also have completed Sendero Verde, and that is 700, a little over 700 units of 100% affordable passive house project. It's up in East Harlem. That is with Rose, Jonathan Rose Companies and Acacia Development, as well as L&M. And that building, again, we have Stephen Winter helping us on that. And that building is mind-blowing also, because that building is now 100% affordable. It's a brick building. You would never know, looking from the outside, that this building is this high-performance, super high-performance building. And it's occupied. People love it. It's working. Everyone's very happy.
You talk about like a robust facade to make sure that the temperature within the building is regulated to a certain extent. Are there like different building materials that you're seeing work better than others? Or are there new materials that you're excited to see come about, or changes to materials that you're looking forward to?
Well, so the Cornell Tech, that project is prefabricated panels that were made off-site and brought on-site. So they are, say, 9 feet by 30 feet wide. That methodology is a little bit more expensive. And since then, we've tried to do more on-site, just stick-built. Just like, as I was saying, Sendero Verde, that project is a 35-story, 34-story brick facade with mineral wool insulation and metal studs behind it. So it's actually the opposite in a way. And to answer your question, we're not looking for unique materials. We want to be using regular materials so that it can sort of meet cost, and also that the folks building it can actually build it. Part of the magic in Sendero as well as Toronto is that we're trying to just use off-the-shelf products. Of course, all of our clips are thermally broken. We don't have metal-to-metal touching each other anymore, but everyone's doing that in their design. And we want to have mineral wool insulation because that's a sort of natural product. We don't really want that XPS or the other one. Trying to get off-the-shelf products to do these fancy, quote-unquote fancy things, or make this robust wall. There are a lot of taping. There's taping at the joints of things. That material is necessary to make sure things are really tightly sealed.
Do you find that as the building is larger, the more difficult it is to source these materials?
From a calculation standpoint, we have found from a full building model, it is actually easier for a large building to meet passive house standards than for a single family home. Reason being is that a single family home, first of all, it has a roof, all those, let's call it 6 facades. Like there's a roof, the 4 walls, and the foundation. Well, in a large scale building, there's just so many more people living under those same it's just the area. It's called the surface to area volume
Yeah.
ratio. It's just so much easier. There's in a multifamily building to meet the standard than it is in a single family home due to exposure and there's a lot of other aspects.
Going to the materials, nowadays we see a lot of modular houses and container buildings. How does that play in with the passive housing? Is that even possible?
I mean, I would think it's possible. You would need, once the sort of modular pieces were put together, you would just need to sort of work on how they were well connected. We have not done modular housing, passive house yet. We'd like to.
Very good questions.
We came prepared,
Yeah, you did. Very good questions. So for some reason, I'm not sure why, but whenever I think, green or something that's sustainable, I'm thinking electric. But that's not necessarily the case. How does passive house work in terms of its green nature? How does it, if it's not all electric, right? Passive doesn't have to necessarily be electric, just have to meet certain standards, right? And that budget that you were talking about.
Right. It's really about reducing the amount of energy needed to operate a building is what is really making it a high performance building. See, which is why passive house has such a great role in the electrification conversation, right? Because we're saying we want all buildings to be electric, but we want to lower the load as much as possible so that each building has the smallest footprint, so that each building puts the least strain on the grid. So if you design to passive house, you have just shrunk the load 60%, 50, 60% smaller than a typical comparable building. So this is the goal, is to design this building to use less energy so that all buildings need less energy so that we have to just make less energy.
Yeah. And then electricity also still has a carbon footprint. It's not like
it does. I mean, we are counting on electricity becoming clean, right? We all know that currently electricity is not clean. It's made from burning fossil fuels.
Yep.
But the goal that we all want to keep our eye on, the prize, the goal is to get that electricity to become clean. So we want to build our buildings that use electricity to be a part of the celebration when electricity is then clean. And also to utilize geothermal. Like if we could utilize geothermal more, very hard in New York City, but if we could utilize geothermal more, that is also a great way to lower the footprint of the building on the grid. And one other very interesting thing, I hope you'll find this interesting.
I find the whole thing interesting so far.
Is wastewater heat recovery. So this is super cool. And this is not really architecture.
I hope it's exactly what it sounds like.
It is kind of exactly what it sounds like.
Because we have a name for our episode, I think.
Architects, we are sort of in charge of kind of like coordinating all of these things. We don't figure them out, but we have to get them all in the building. So wastewater heat recovery involves literally pulling the heat off of the water before it leaves the building. Now, makes sense, right? You spend all this money heating the water, right? So you want to get that heat out of the water before it leaves the building.
Yeah, why give up that heat?
Why give up that heat? It's the same thing with energy ventilator recoveries. We want to pull all the air out of the building through an energy ventilator recovery, an ERV, and pull the heat, not the smells, not the this, not the that, just the heat. So all this heat recovery, it's happening all over. I'm sure it's happening in this building right now. It's happening everywhere. Everyone is collecting heat from that's generated. We're trying to figure out how we can pull the heat off of all that energy of even the subway running along the tracks. People are trying to figure out how to get all that heat. So heat recovery is very interesting. It's bringing that heat back into, let's say, the hot water system, and that heat will help to raise your hot water a few degrees.
It's recycling.
It's recycling.
I mean, it's a basic concept, but I didn't realize that was even a technology we had to pull heat from wastewater.
Pull heat from very, very, yes, we should do it more.
I mean, it's like if it's just going out into the sewers, why not utilize the energy that you've put into it before it goes out the window?
Like not just heat, but like money. Like think of just money just pouring out and going up through the chimney. Also, all this heat is just money. We spent all this money to get it hot, and then we just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it does take time to think about this stuff and to plan it and to think about it, right? It's like not something that you would think about right away. So you did this, Cornell project. Because of it, is that why you got certified in passive houses?
So I wanted to know more when we were designing the project, and went to a couple conferences. And yes, it was I think a 2-week course, and learned a bit of the science behind it and a bit of the calculations, because there are calculations that you want to be familiar with as an architect. And took a test, and I passed.
Then you go from there to becoming certified. There's something that you really like about it. Does that happen during the certification process while you're doing work at Cornell Tech? Because there's lots of people that do their job, and then there are people that become, leading names in that area, which is the case here. So how do you go from that point one, not knowing, 0 to 100 is my question.
Well, I think being a part of Cornell Tech was so motivating, so inspiring, right? I mean, you're making something. Architecture, you're always making something from nothing, which to begin with is amazing, to stand on top of a building that you've made. But here we're standing on top of a building that's going to really change the way the whole world is putting buildings together. It's amazing. And so we were given many opportunities to talk about the building. My colleagues and I from Handel, I spoke with Lois from SWA a lot. We were invited to speak about this building, which was really interesting. That people were interested in what I was doing was interesting, and that I had something really valuable to share with people. People wanted to learn about how to put these things together. We shared our details, we shared our processes, our methodologies, and people were really interested. And when Cornell was ending is when the Sendero Verde RFP came out, which was, a sort of natural fit for us to be involved in that. And we were invited to participate with L&M and Jonathan Rose, which was a great opportunity. So of course we took it. They wanted to do that, had to be passive house, so that helped, right? HPD required that be passive house, and so we can do this, no problem. We sort of were able to tell a story that we can do this, and we won that, which was amazing. So we win that. And then that took 7 years or something. It was 3 buildings during COVID. We finished it before COVID, and then the construction is during COVID. We are doing a senior affordable passive house for Catholic Charities right now for the Grand Street Guild, which is an amazing combination, right? Because seniors, affordable, passive house.
Yeah.
Sounds great. But we are actually surprised that we're not doing more, which is a bit worrisome. We don't really understand why the development community is not building more yet. Perhaps this will happen as people start to digest the code even more. Not sure.
What would you say to a group of developers, if they were listening, and I hope they are, about why they should be getting involved in building passive design developments?
Right. Well, I think what's very trendy nowadays is health and wellness, right? And a lot of developers, they are interested in that, in promoting health and wellness for their marketing and for a way to sell their building. And passive house is a key or doorway to health and wellness. It provides filtered fresh air, also this incredibly acoustical separation. So you're building this robust wall with this triple glazing, but what you're really doing also is providing an incredible acoustical barrier.
Yeah.
So that is a benefit.
Especially in New York City, right?
Of course, right? Cornell is actually right next to the Queensboro Bridge, and you're in there and you do not hear the bridge. Wow. So there's the wellness factor of filtered fresh air, the acoustical benefits, and so I think developers, that's very interesting to them. But then also it's a way to meet all these crazy new codes that are out there. And the last thing is also it ultimately gives you a better building. You are building a building that is watched more carefully, because part of the certification, you do have to have a lot of on-site inspections. So you're sitting there watching, are they putting the insulation? Are they taping it?
You know what's in your building, right?
Are they really doing it, right? And it's all photo documented. There's a lot. So that very careful construction is really giving you a better building, which I would think is great.
Yeah, nothing's like hidden in the walls. You're getting the insulation that you need to for that design.
Yes, you are really getting what is on the drawings, which is very cool.
Yeah. I mean, after working on projects like Sendero Verde, do you find that there are aspects of that project that you want to be utilized within future affordable housing projects? Are there specific details that you're like, oh, I need to see that in another one?
Yes. Well, I mean, we are integrating passive house details into all of our projects because, well, first, to meet code, a lot of these details are becoming more normal, but also to sort of slip them in because we know they make a better building. So we're like, oh, well, we'll just slip that in, and sometimes it doesn't carry through because the contractor's like, I don't know what that is. But then sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we do that all the time now. Yeah, I know what that is. I did that on my last project, or this looks interesting, we'll do this, and so we do try at the beginning of projects particularly to sort of insert all of these different things and talk to people and get it in there. We've got to talk to mechanical engineer, and there's a lot of players in these projects.
Yeah.
So you've kind of lectured in many places about this topic, and involved in many groups that I've seen. What are the responses or the pushback you're getting, whether development community in New York City or elsewhere, if any pushback you're getting to this to the past design in response to your promotion of it? Like, what are the counter arguments you're getting?
Right. I mean, people always assume it's more expensive, and they're just like, that's not for me. So we were interviewing a window supplier for Cornell. Now, this is back in 2013 or so, or 14. And this window supplier looked at the details, and I was like, this project's not for me. Like, I don't know what, this is like my next project. I don't know what this is, but this project is just not for me because it's not business as usual. So this guy who has been doing the same thing for 26 years does not want to change. And this is the problem. They want to do what they know how to do, what they know how to budget, what they know how the time, not just budget money, but time, manpower. They want to do what they know how to do, which makes sense.
They're
right?
comfortable doing it.
They're comfortable doing that. So so we did not hire that person to do the windows, but we did execute the windows with, and now there's more and more companies. I think what's been really awesome is to see the difference in people's websites, in the amount of materials, in just the conversation. I mean, it has exploded.
Yeah.
Right? It has literally exploded. We needed a door for Cornell that was really robust on a mechanical room, and we could not find a door. So we used a refrigerator door, like an ice cream truck, because we could not find one. And, that is a great example. Now they're making doors that you can just get into your spec that are real products that are made for like real people going in and out of them with real locks, and they're extremely robust doors. So it's just so interesting to watch the construction industry and not just the construction but the material suppliers and everybody. It's just changed radically.
And I know that the passive house has been much more accepted, at least in Europe, right, or Germany, I guess, where it came from, and not as much as in the United States, where at least it seems like it's coming more to fruition in the U.S. now. First of all, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm right, hopefully, then why is there that difference? What's different between overseas versus here? Or maybe there are certain states that are more open to it than New York, like you've worked in California.
Well, there are definitely states and regions that are more interested in passive house than others. Like Vancouver up in Canada happens to be a hot zone. New York, Ireland, there's certain hot zones around the world where this is happening. And, Passive House US, which is FIAS, they're super active, and there are a lot of Passive House projects in the country. I don't have the statistic of how many, but there are a lot. and it's growing. Certainly since Cornell was the first one. I mean, look at how far we've come. It's being baked into now HPD. They have it in their language, in their future housing initiative. They have it in as a pathway to code compliance. I mean, it's really a word that I think a lot of people in the industry now know, a concept. So I think it's coming. I think it's coming along.
Yeah, and then it'll be, there's one of the things that I read that you said in an interview, and I forget exactly before who was that interview with, but you had said that that's what it is. It's not business as usual, and so people aren't used to it. But once people start getting used to the fact that this is the new standard, it's not going to be as crazy as it once was. And also the technology is developing significantly, right? It's getting better. Like you said, there are doors that you actually use versus ones that you're like retrofitting, right?
Sure, doors, windows, all those things. Yes, I think everyone's growing with the technology. And
yeah. I mean, well, you've been one of the pivotal people who have been advocating for passive housing in different spaces. How do you approach developers or city planners when you're trying to advocate for passive housing in this specific project?
So, many of my projects, they start off, we're going to do a passive house, especially competitions, right? We're like, we're going in with passive house because, it's going to tip the scale. And so we very often start in that with those aspirations. And then certain things come along and do change the trajectory of that project, or we just don't win. At Handel, now we have actually a sustainable design director. His name is Louis Kale, and he's incredible. He was involved in some of these projects, and we elevated him to become that role so that he can be in every single project and be trying to get every single project, not just passive house, but to be integrate more sustainable design features there. And so, we try to have that conversation, and we're able to have that conversation, which I think developers appreciate. But, unfortunately, we're only the architects. We there's just so much we can do. We can try our best, but we are not the ultimate decision makers.
The new standards and for carbon emissions in New York City and across the country, but because of those standards, obviously a lot of older buildings, and New York City is filled with them, are going to have to do some retrofitting, which is extremely expensive, from what I understand. And I don't think there's a way, maybe there is, to retrofit to passive house.
There is a whole program for Passive House Institute is called EnerFit. It is a whole separate section, a whole section of criteria and methodologies. Energy budget is more, but there is, and you can 100% retrofit buildings. And there are a lot of people, architects, who really don't want to be doing new construction. They want to be doing retrofits because that's sort of the work of it's the work of the saints, right? You really need to get into all those buildings and get those buildings up to speed. So there are a lot of architects that are out there right now that are working on that with their consultants, to get those down.
Aside from the climate benefits or the energy benefits and the cost savings on the back end from retrofitting a building, what's the developer's incentive to retrofit their building now?
Well, I think it's these new codes, right?
Yeah, they have to.
All of these crazy
the penalties.
Some developers are willing to take the hit because they do the math, but I don't know that that's going to last. As the years go by, the penalties are going to increase significantly. You got to start somewhere. You have. I think it's all good, and hopefully it all leads to a more sustainable future. That's what we need, right?
So in working on these passive house design developments, what are the things are there any standouts that a problem that came up similar, I guess, to the door scenario, where an interesting way of dealing with that problem?
So in general, steel that is supporting your canopies or your balconies or your dunnage on roofs, steel does not want to anymore be going straight into your building in a non-broken way. We are always breaking it now with something to thermally break steel from coming from the inside straight to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like on old buildings, which is more concrete example when you look at these eyebrow buildings, right? We used to call them eyebrow buildings, where you'd see the edge of slab like sticking out of the building.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore, because that is the heat, again, is just like flowing out. You put a heat gun up to that building and you would see like red at all of the edge of slabs, because you would just see the heat pouring out. So we don't do that anymore. We thermally break things. We bring the insulation straight across the edge of the slab, tight, nice and tight, and like a nice big sweatshirt or coat.
And another thing is balconies, right? And I didn't realize that, but balconies are open areas. They're kind of killers of the airtightness and then the heat insulation, right?
Right. So balconies, if you could imagine like the concrete slab coming out, but there's like a break in it. I mean, it's not fully broken because you keep some sort of rebar, but you're literally putting like mushy stuff into the concrete. So you are breaking that. You're separating those two lines of concrete so that it is not a thermal break is sort of exactly kind of what it sounds like. It is breaking the conductiveness, the thermal conductiveness of a material, right? It is stopping it so that the heat is staying in. It's not just traveling along straight out your balcony.
It's so interesting.
You can still do it. And people now are using thermal breaks in regular designs. And actually DOB requires that you show thermal break details in your energy code drawings. So it's pretty cool, right? This is something that Passive House used to require, and now energy code, you have to show these type of details.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. If you're leaking, some of that energy outside and where it could be kept inside, right? Then you're not generating what you need to be generating, or what
you're wasting.
Yeah, you're wasting it. Something like the wastewater, where you want to make sure to keep it as tight as possible and keep everything inside, so you're not losing any of those resources that you're spending the money to generate. Let's use the things that we're using, not throw it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So thermal break details are, they're very exciting.
I'm sure that there are passive houses out there, whether designed by you or someone else, that there are leaks or things that could be more efficiently done that you just didn't think of, or didn't realize. Yes. And that's actually my next question. Has that happened where you've said, I did this on Cornell Tech, and it's like, actually, we should have done this, and we're going to improve on that design?
You definitely. And, out in the field, you're doing smoke tests. You're literally testing the wall with smoke to see if there's any holes in the facade. So you are doing this, and, right at the first sort of window and the first wall, you're testing the facade to see if what you drew and what you think you're building actually works. Yeah. And then you make tweaks on the site for sure, and then repeat it, 6,000 times.
I can't imagine.
But you really have to make those tweaks, and of course we bring that to the next project. And Soko Tech, facade consultants, Stephen Winter, they're doing loads of calculations and watching how all of these details are coming together. We're drawing them. We're trying to get what looks good as well as what works. They're really schooling us all the time on like different ways and different, very subtle sometimes ways that make a big difference.
Yeah.
So the thickness of the facade, for example, it has to change to retain energy. Does the wall inside the apartment, do they also change, or you continue to have them the same as usual?
So I just want to clarify, the facade doesn't necessarily need to be very much wider. Like, we don't want people to be scared of this. Our overall facade for our brick construction, I think, is only 1 inch thicker in the cavity and maybe 2.5 inches on the inboard side. So we're not talking about huge. And I don't know if you're familiar with EIFS. So EIFS,
a little bit,
EIFS, not very pretty material, but EIFS is literally just insulation. And it's beautiful material to keep your buildings. So it's a little sad because it's so, it's not the most beautiful material, but it really is it's conceptually a great material to think about. It's just a big piece of insulation that's on the outside.
A lot of people were using it because it was cheap, but we had a lot of issues. We had a lot of issues with it because of the way it looked.
Right.
Especially if you have a fully affordable building next to a market rate building, you see one is EIFS, has some other nice facades. So we've had that's where my familiarity comes from. Where the problem arises.
It does do the trick for keeping your building insulated and continuous insulation. It passes right by the edge of slab. It's a pretty cool material in that sense.
The architect, as far as I know, don't necessarily go back and double check and confirm that the contractors are doing, building per design. At least that's what I understand. How involved are you in going back to the building after having done the design to do these tests and make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to?
Right. First, you had asked about the interior walls, which I think comes back to this. There's really nothing on the interior walls that's different. Apartment to apartment is still straight up regular that we've all seen. So we're not really going. So, and all of the inspections for Passive House are really done by inspectors, which is not Handel. We hire inspectors to, Stephen Winter often does them. Different folks do the facade inspection. We know that they're building the facade as we've designed it. And the interior layouts, we know they're building them as we did it, because if they don't, that would be crazy. And then nothing would fit. And we know, we're constantly on site looking at things. So I don't think that would ever be an issue. We trust who is putting these together.
When you're designing it, the numbers, the calculations, the math, the science behind all of it, it's meant so that it's going to work. They test it to make sure, but generally there's not really any hitches in that.
In that overall assumption, no. But maybe how the jam detail is overlapping with the exterior sheathing. Exactly how that's going to be installed. Maybe that condition needs to be refined in the field, but it's not a systemic sort of overhaul of the basis of design.
Are you seeing anything in the world of the office to residential conversions, given the new statutes, the tax exemption, and all the promotion they're doing to try to do these conversions? And what are you seeing and what are you working on? You don't have to go specifics, but generally kind of what are you seeing and what are you doing if you're involved in that kind of work?
So our office, we are involved in a couple of those, a huge one down in D.C. It's definitely possible, and we are happy to do that type of work. It's laborious, for sure, because, sort of, first of all, getting the right floor plan that can accommodate the right depths for light and air, right? Because that's a little bit of a problem. Office buildings are very deep. You often end up with a lot of nice storage. Sometimes people are, coming through and making new cores, new light wells into these giant office buildings. If you make a new light well, maybe the numbers work, and that works. But there are challenges, but we're doing them, and it's great. That concrete, you don't have to re-pour it, and all that steel that's in there, that is a green building. The greenest building are the buildings that are built. That's what they say. The greenest building is the building that is already built, because if you can reuse that building, you've really saved.
That's true, because then you're saving all that, the
reduce,
emissions
reuse, recycle. It's a classic.
Reduce, reuse, recycle, yeah.
Given how involved you are in Passive House, what would you like to see happen, going forward, whether it's in the country or in New York City, development-wise? I'm not keeping it that open.
Well, of course, I would like to see more of these. And be a person that can inspire other people to do more of them. I'm happy to talk about this with pretty much anyone that wants to talk about it. And
as this is Exhibit A over here.
And I think it's really important, and I think that I really feel like I've had an impact, which I find to be kind of awesome, and I would like to continue to not only inspire people out of the firm, but my own firm. We're 130 people, 150 people, and just to even keep the firm on the same track so that we're constantly lifting everyone up. We just want to keep I guess continue is really, I need more buildings to do more. And there are new technologies that keep coming out, in HVAC systems that are super interesting, like this wastewater heat recovery and geothermal that I'd love to have a chance to integrate. I've never done geothermal, so I'd like to do that.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that too. I was looking at a house to buy that had geothermal that I didn't know, and they're like, your savings are going to be amazing. And
right. Well, it's because 3 feet below the Earth's surface, you're at like 51 degrees or something. Like very quickly, when you get below the Earth's surface, the temperature is quite low. Geothermal is kind of low tech, actually. You run pipes sometimes extremely deep, but because you need the length, but you run pipes and you are able to extract that. In that sense, you are either extracting heat into the 51 degrees, or you're going reverse. You can go reverse too with heat.
Back and forth. So that's how it works. It basically uses heating cooling from the below the Earth's surface.
Yes.
To then bring it to the surface where you can utilize it.
Because if it's 0 degrees outside and it's 51, I believe it's 51 degrees, then that's great. 51 degrees, you've just raised the air temperature of right? So you're constantly moving heat around in energy heat recovery.
Yeah, I mean that's how it works. So you're trying to save as much as you can, like we talked about before, that recycling concept. One of the things that I saw was interesting in one of your interviews was, and I'm going to misquote you completely, and I meant to take the quote with me, but you said if there was a sleeve that can fit, was it a P-tack, that would really be a game?
Maybe 10 years ago, the sleeve that goes through the facade that accepts kind of what is, you're probably all familiar with P-tacks. They're almost like through-the-wall air conditioners.
Yeah.
That sleeve was very leaky. And could not meet passive house standards because it was so leaky, meaning leaky of air coming through.
Yeah, it wasn't airtight.
It wasn't airtight. And we spent a lot of time trying to get that thing to be tight, and we couldn't. We Handel, I say we, but we were working with all sorts of people to help make that happen. Now they do have a high-performance unit that is airtight, that is running on electricity, has refrigerant inside of it, and is able. Our project for the Catholic Charities and the Grand Street Guild, we are using those in a passive house design. So it is a through-the-wall unit that meets the passive house standard. And so yes, this is a game changer. This unit it makes it more attainable to actually meet passive house in low-income projects.
No, that's great. I mean, like you said that would be significant, and I didn't know that was reminding me a question whether or not that had come to fruition.
I mean, that's pretty cool that I said that. I don't know when. It's actually happened. That's how the industry is changing, right? It really is changing. I think the construction, we're identifying needs, and then the industry is filling those needs, which is fantastic.
So I think
cool.
There are all sorts of technology changes and things that hopefully are for the better, as long as people are using them for the good, and to be sustainable designs and to lower your emissions. I think what you're saying is exactly right. You can meet these requirements. People are going to have to come on board no matter what, but you still have a lot of old school people who are thinking in the old mentality and not really, or they just don't want to spend the money to do the designs. What kind of things are you seeing now when we were in such a turbulent time with no tax exemption, high interest rates, capital being difficult, like I said, or expensive to get, all these problems that made development very difficult. Are you seeing anything new given these new housing packages that have come out?
We are not seeing as much private development as we had in the past right now, because I think it was nice that 421A was extended, so some of those things are actually coming back to life a little bit. But prior to that, there was a lot of not developing. Yeah. And so now we are seeing some of those projects come alive, so that's really exciting. Institutional we've been focusing on a lot of university work, dormitory work is something we would really like to do more. And a lot of universities have these incredibly, they put on their website, sustainable is really important to us. Well, at some point they really have to start really doing something.
Yeah, not just saying it.
Right.
Not just saying it, and designing a building. Their new buildings, they have to be to a very high standard, right? And So we're having some traction with other university projects and things such as that.
So we talked about, a lot of this is all residential. For commercial passive house, is there some kind of need or desire for that?
That is absolutely a concept. And we also, Handel, have done up in Boston, we have done a building of which the middle portion is office. It is almost 800,000 square feet. It is the largest office building that meets Passive House standards. It is Passive House certified. Just that piece.
Just that sliver?
Just the middle.
The sliver, which is 800,000 square feet.
I can't imagine what the rest of it is like.
Right.
It's a very big building.
That's
Winthrop Square. It's Winthrop Square in Boston. That's Millennium Place. Millennium Partners is the developer for that project. And that is an amazing project. It's curtain wall. Triple glazed curtain wall, and it has the mechanical system to support it, and it's meeting Passive House standards, and it's certified. And what's really interesting about that is that in these terrible times of people wanting empty office space, they are doing fantastically well on renting it out, leasing it. And one in particular is Deloitte. If you go on Deloitte's website, sustainability, we're really into it, and they are doing what they say. They are a tenant in that building, and they're super proud to be in that building, and they are now working in a passive house environment, which is the same benefits: acoustical benefits, ventilation, health, interior healthy environment, lowering their electric bills, using less electricity, using less energy, all those same things. And you're probably in your office more than you're in your house.
Yeah, well, hopefully. I mean, nowadays
if you're a
not so
lawyer
much.
or an architect, you probably are.
I mean, we're definitely in an office, whether it's in the city or in a basement in our mom's house. This was actually wonderful. We learned a ton. We love to geek out with you, by the way, on this stuff.
Thank you so
because
much.
when you don't know about a topic, to learn about it is, and not to actually have to do it, is a pleasure. But to go in and doing it, like I could tell you about my job, and you're like, oh, that's fascinating, and then you can go back to your life.
Right. Information for information purposes is so nice.
But also, tell people where they can contact you so that they can, you can discuss any questions they might have on passive house design or energy efficiency or any of the other great things that you and Handel are doing, right? Handel.
Right, Handel Architects. We have a lot of my articles and other articles that have been written by our company are on our website, and so we talk about our projects, so you can learn more about them there. Hopefully I'll be lecturing someday soon somewhere near you. Or, you can also just give a call. I've talked to people literally from all over the world that are interested in this topic, and then I find out, 5 years or 7 years later that they've actually executed one of these, and that's just super cool, Yeah. So happy to talk to anyone.
And we'll share your email address in the notes so that you can contact Deborah directly about this. She's an amazing source of information, and you were so lovely to have, and we so appreciate you coming in and spending the time with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that's our show. Thanks so much for listening.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave comments, because we love to hear from our audience, right, Brenda?
Yeah, feel free to reach out at info@sideandshine.com or visit our website at sideandshine.com. We really look forward to hearing from you.
You could also reach out to David and Brenda at dshamshovich@sideandshine.com and bslakowski at sideandshine.com.
Those are lengthy last names. You can just find us on our website.
That's right.